welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
Oh, not so good. I combined a laxative and alphabet soup. I call it letter rip.
You're supposed to save those for the end, you know.
Yeah, but you don't let me do them at the end, so I figure I'll just open them.
I let you do them, I just groan.
But see, if I open it now and you groan, that kind of throws everything off. So
yes, it does.
I'm gonna start with them. Do.
We are recording this the day before the election. Did you vote yet?
I am going to go and vote in person since I've been off almost every Tuesday in a long, long time. So, and it's only 2 blocks from my house, and the weather's actually turned out nice. So it'll be nice. I get up, I'll go wander over, vote. On the way back, I'll stop by Holiday, pick up some bad for me but damn tasty donuts, maybe a large Diet Mountain Dew, and just come home, pull out a bunch of comics, sit on the back porch, and let the 3-season porch warm up while I read me some funny books.
Myself, we are in the middle of our busiest season at work, and tomorrow they slapped us with mandatory overtime till 7 p.m.
Mandatory overtime.
Which, thank goodness the polls close at 8 o'clock, so I can go get in line. I have fully charged my Kindle. My coat has big pockets, so I can throw in a soda. And people, I didn't do the early voting because I checked on the website where people talk about it, and it was like, oh, Saturday, it's a 3-hour wait. I don't have 3 hours on a Saturday. I really don't. Because it's like, okay, if I get in line now, that means I have to leave the line before I vote so that I could go to work. So.
Yeah. Nope.
So I will be voting on Election Day. And Howard the Duck will win this time.
Don't you believe it?
I will believe
The question for you is, what are you going to do, well, other than mandatory overtime? Are you going to be watching any news, any election results, or are you just going to go to bed and wake up Wednesday and see what happens?
I am going to go to the gym after I vote, do my hour on the treadmill, because I screwed up my elbow over the weekend, so I can't do any lifting. I was going to start lifting in November because I've been able to work my schedules so that I can have at least an hour and a half every 4 days of just, okay, I could go to the gym. But I screwed up my elbow, so I can't do any upper body stuff. So I'm just going to go to the gym, do an hour to maybe an hour and a half on the treadmill, where I'm watching the TV show Westworld, because I have HBO Max and I can download it and put it on my tablet. Out on the Facebook land, there are so many people who, tonight on Treadmill TV, and I've become one of those people. And then when I get back, I will turn on the Stephen Colbert special on Showtime and get my results from that.
Well, let's go this route. What'd you do on Halloween?
Halloween, let's see. I woke up late, which was glorious.
Glorious! I know, wasn't it great?
Did you hear that?
And I even got to admit, I enjoyed, the day after Halloween, I enjoyed my extra hour of sleep.
We'll get to that when we get to Freaking and Geeking. But on Halloween, I watch a couple of football games. I have the Marvel Horror, the second Marvel Horror anthology, so I read some stories in that. And then once it got dark, I turned off the lights in the house. I left a bowl of Brussels sprouts out on the deck with a sign that said, please take only one. Oddly enough, none of the trick-or-treaters took any of them.
You should have fried that, deep fried it, that sucker. Everybody loves deep fried.
Yeah, but then outside they get cold and mushy.
No, I don't think the Yabbits would eat them, but they might.
And I watched some Criterion has a section on 70s horror, so I watch a couple of 70s horror movies. I watched Season of the Witch, which is a George Romero movie, which if you read the interviews with him, it's one of the movies that he wishes more people watched. It's a subtle horror movie. And then I watched one of the most unsubtle horror movies ever, Dracula 80, 1972, which Dracula gets revived in swingin' England in 1972. And again, it's Peter Cushing versus Christopher Lee's Dracula. One of the last Dracula films from Hammer. We still got the Satanic Rites of Dracula, which Christopher Lee was in. And then Dracula and the Seven Golden Vampires, which I've never seen, but it was a Hammer doing a movie with the Shaw brothers. And I want to see, I think that's the one where Christopher Lee said, oh, fuck, no. And the Seven Golden Vampires. Yeah, there it is. It was also retitled The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires because Christopher Lee was not in it. Peter Cushing, however, needed a job because that big money from Star Wars had not poured in yet. Christopher Lee said no. Peter Cushing said yes. It was Dracula versus Kung Fu guys. Now, how well do you know the Hammer Dracula films, Joe?
Not at all. I'm not a horror guy, so I'm not really big into them.
Now, when I was a kid, they would show the Hammer movies late at night, and they wouldn't show them at the midnight horror movies. They were new enough and classy enough that they were shown as the 10:30 late movie on the CBS channel. And, you know, CBS was the Tiffany network. And so they showed Dracula's Risen from the Grave, which was the remake of Dracula with Christopher Lee. And then the second one, Christopher Lee was not in. It was called The Brides of Dracula. And it was pretty mediocre. And then Christopher Lee did the rest of them up till Dracula and the Seven Golden Vampires. The Hammer movies, if you've never seen the Hammer movies, they were British. They were in color. And even back in the 50s, they were in color, even though they weren't high-budget movies. And Dracula was usually menacing really hot British girls, usually with red hair, wearing corsets and bustiers that pushed everything, and they sold boobs. It was blood and boobs.
Boobs are good.
Now, because it was the 70s, because it was 50s and 60s, it was just, cleavage and not full nudity. But,
Yeah, cool. Well, nowadays, before Dracula bites somebody, he'll have you recently had any fever or cough or been in contact with anyone diagnosed with COVID-19? Times are changing. My Halloween, we actually watch movies as well, but we went it kind of differently because we didn't want to fall down the decision hell that is having 25 different pay-per-views or cable or streaming or whatever, because you just sit there and look, and then inevitably watch Animal House anyways. But we didn't do the Halloween. I told Chris I had all these freebie free comic book day comics I could give away. Did not get to the source. I wanted to pick up some Halloween stuff. And par for the course, I did not get my discount comic book service order in time, because this was going to be previews week, but I haven't got my previews yet. So hopefully maybe next week. Anyway, so I got home from work and we shut up the house tight. A few people wandering on the street, a few lights, but for the most part, not a lot going on. And the first movie I chose was North by Northwest.
Oh!
The American spy thriller produced and directed by Alfred Hitchcock with Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
Yep. And very, very young Martin Landau, as well as other people. We had to stop and go, wait a minute, I've heard this guy's voice before. And so there was a lot of that. But Chris had never seen it. And I saw it way back in the 80s. A friend of mine, his folks had an RCA video player, which wasn't like a laser disc. It was more like an actual record player that you would put the record in. and it would put it in, and it would have a needle and go along with the groove, and very high tech. But it lost
Yeah,
out to.
I saw one of those. Someone donated that and a whole bunch of those records to the group home I worked at back in 2008. And even back then, it would not connect to any of the TVs that we had without us going out and buying an adapter.
Yeah.
And I looked at the movies, so I was like, none of the kids want any of these.
And for us, we had a place up on Lexington, almost right across from Mr. Zero is now in Roseville. Robert Paul Television, and you could buy almost anything you needed from them, or if they couldn't buy it, you could find it. So Chris had loved it, and I, other than the infamous, or I said that wrong, the famous running from an airplane in a field scene, I remembered hardly any of it. So it was like watching it new again. And it was absolutely fun because, it's a journey or a mistaken identity. I don't know if you can spoil a movie from 1959, but I don't want to in case any of you happen to have HBO Max. You can go look at it. Chris's choice was Poltergeist, a 1982 film, which was a supernatural horror. Again, it was directed by Tobe Hooper and written by Steven Spielberg, but he.
By the way, does Joe know what is the movie that Tobe Hooper is best known for?
Well, not really fair because I've got my Wikipedia rolling. So go ahead and tell people.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Anyway, Steven wrote it with a bunch of people. Craig D. Nelson, Heather O'Rourke, a lot of different people in it. I was kind of Chris likes horror movies. I don't. And I just I remember this one a little bit more than I do the other one. And all I could think about was I would inadvertently when the poltergeist would come out and scream at the lady, I'd be like, where's Dr. Finkman when we need him? You won't go yelling at somebody with a positron glider now, will ya? I wanted to watch Ghostbusters, but we didn't. We finished off the night by watching some Doctor Who, but that was kind of our Halloween, just real easy. Holly, of course, it was her birthday, my youngest daughter. She went out sober. She came home sober. I'm very disappointed in her. It was her 21st wedding anniversary. Or wedding.
Birthday.
Birthday, yeah. What do I know? I wasn't. I had Fireball. So, anyways, that's pretty much what I did. And then today, like I said, it was the 3-season sit on my porch, read comic book day.
You read comic books?
Or what's what I call homework, because last week Cory and I decided we were going to review some comic books today.
We are?
Well, of course we are.
Oh, crap. Let's see what I've read lately.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
right.
Good. I've read a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Don't be giving me that crap. Mainly because I'll start out, as I'm wont to do, because what I started out with was a miniseries that's been sitting in my box since 2017. Spider-Man 2. Brian Michael Bendis, Sarah Pichelli, I believe. And this, of course, was a follow-up to the wildly popular Spider-Man, which was the official crossover between Peter Parker and Miles Morales back when there was a Ultimate Universe and a 616 universe, for lack of a better thing. This occurs after the two universes have been smooshed together. And of course, if you remember Spider-Man 1, it ends with Peter Parker looking up Miles Morales, and he goes, or what did he say? Because they put it on the first page, not the opener, but like the splash page, kind of telling you what's going on. I think Peter was like, "Oh my Lord," or something.
Yep, Peter Parker Googled Miles Morales.
Oh my God, that's what he said.
Our interview. And was, oh my God, and that was your cliffhanger, and then we waited years for the next part.
Yeah, and it didn't. The book, I enjoyed the book. I mean, for one thing, I had to deal with, okay, I already know they're together. Well, this takes place after Secret Wars when everything got mushed together. And apparently, whoever was, only certain people remember a different reality, and they kind of play up that Miles does remember that his whole reality was a different reality. He just doesn't think about it because everybody he knows is now in his universe, which is our original Spider-Man universe, which we'll call 616, just because we dig Alan Moore. And but what happens is in that same building where the original crossover happened, the portal opens again, and a very different Taskmaster comes through and has a meeting with, who do you think he would have a meeting with?
Well, the Kingpin?
Well, he's in there too.
Oh, okay.
Because he's intertwined with our universe's Mr. Morales. And of course, as you read the story and it goes through, it flips back and forth in times. It tells the story of who our Miles Morales is, why there's no sign of him, how he ties into the Kingpin, and what's his reaction to knowing that there's somebody running around with his name. And the story is actually pretty darn good. It holds up pretty well. I have no idea if it has any ties to current continuity, because after all, that's what, 3 years ago? I don't know.
Yes, it does. And the other Miles Morales has actually been touched on in the current Ultimate Spider-Man series.
Okay, which I haven't been reading. So again, that's all stuff. To me, I will run to either Marvel Unlimited or Wikipedia and just get caught up. But as a standalone, this was actually a pretty good status quo type story, just setting up things and how things are. I don't know how our universe Taskmaster likes the fact that another Taskmaster who's a little bit more powerful than he is running around, but I don't know. Did they ever meet up, Corey?
I don't know yet.
Well, there you go. I just gave you another solid crossover. Maybe there's that long-delayed Taskmaster miniseries. I don't know if it actually is being published or not. All I know is I haven't seen it, and I'm missing issue 1 on my order form, and I don't recall if it got reordered or not. As a beg, borrow,
it's
or buy,
borrow, or ignore.
I like beg. No, I bought it, but if you've never bought it, this is definitely one worth hunting down. They're not. Well, it is expensive, okay? So don't blow a lot of money. I'm pretty sure it's on Marvel Unlimited, and there's also a book that could pick it up. Both Spider-Man series are pretty good. The art's fantastic, and Marco Bagley, he jumped in on the last issue to help out. So, yeah, for you Spider-Man fans, and judging by what's coming up with the Spideyverse and all sorts of other things, this is definitely one to hang on to and pay attention to. Mine, of course, my set that I read is bound for the eBay. So if you're looking to buy one, it'll be up there probably by the time this podcast hits. Or not, I don't know. I've been kind of lazy lately because I like sitting on my 3-season porch with, large Mountain Dew, diet Mountain Dew, some snacks that don't get greasy all over the black covers that these things love to have. And just enjoy what's left of the fall for the moment. Corey, what's the first one on your hit parade?
I got the trade paperback of Luthor, which is a DC Black Label story about Lex Luthor from Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo. Painted cover and everything, but it's computer colored that looks painted. It is a new version of Lex Luthor dealing with Superman. And it's told from Luthor's point of view, explaining why he hates Superman so much. Because it's Black Label, it deals with more adult topics. There's swearing and boobies. And boobies. And it doesn't really pull in the whole DC universe, although there is an excellent sequence with Batman and Bruce Wayne. But the story is Luthor has decided that he is going to take Superman down. He has a complicated plot where he will create his own superhero and generate his own crisis for his superhero to resolve. Now, this is a very standard storyline that's been done hundreds of times, but the plot isn't what's important. It's the plot. There are times where the plot is just kind of a clothesline for you to hang your theme and your characterization on, and that's what this is. This is more about explaining who Lex Luthor is, why he goes to the lengths he does, what he will do, and one of the things I like best about it is he doesn't feel that he's the bad guy. He feels he's the hero. And it's a 145-page graphic novel. The art is fantastic. The computer coloring does make it look a lot like a painting. And if it actually is a painting, that wouldn't surprise me, but it does list penciler and inker. So I'm pretty sure they just did an upscale on the computer coloring so that it looks like a painting. To me, one of the stuff by Brian Azzarello is hit or miss. When he's good, he's very, very good. When he's not good, it's kind of like when you're in a speedboat in a small outdoor pond. He's trying way too hard to be way bigger than the story needs. But in this one, because he's given that room to stretch out, because he doesn't have to tie into anybody else, his storytelling style works very well with this. Again, the art is the key to this story. Just if you pick it up and flip through, this is the kind of art where you can tell that the artist spent a lot of time on this, has a lot of visual references, but it doesn't get bogged down in everybody looking pose. The art still has a flow to it. The story comes to it's not something where you read this and then you need to read something else, which is another problem with a lot of these Black Label collected editions. This stands on its own, brings new life to the Lex Luthor Superman, and really in a lot of ways I wish that this was more like what Lex Luthor was like in the regular DC universe. There for a while he was portrayed as kind of he was a business mogul who had his reasons for not liking Superman. And about 15 years ago, they decided, let's just make him a crazy scientific genius. And that's what he's been ever since. But the cold, ruthless businessman Luthor works so much better because it contrasts against Superman. This is a reprint of a miniseries again. This one is a buy for me and is some of the best Superman stories have been Lex Luthor kind of solo stories. And this is another one of those. So I recommend this as a buy. Joe?
Last time we were together, I told you about how you could get yourself a copy of Cerebus #1 for $10. It's that or pay over $5,000 for a copy on eBay. Well, $2,000 you can find one that's not slabbed. The one I talked about is basically just a remastered work. The gentleman that Dave's working with, and I'm trying to find it. I think it's Sterling Publications. I think. Let me just check this out.
Let me whip this out.
Nothing like being prepped. I got so many windows open. Oh, that I can't figure it out. Whatever. It's in the last podcast. Look it up because you can still buy books directly from them. They have a couple different editions. The regular one's $10. It's a cool artifact because, like I said, if you can't afford the bucks to get a real one, and I had one at one time, it's worth picking up. And they have some variant covers like a gold, a silver, or whatever. But what I didn't pick up, and I went back to pick up, was Cerebus, the Aardvark, The Secret History of the Counterfeit. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, and I think nowadays it's a collectible in its own, in 1977, of course, Cerebus #1 was published. They printed about 2,000 copies, I think maybe a little less. And it became probably one of the most successful independent comics in the 70s. In 1982, 10 copies of Cerebus #1 were allegedly found at a flea market and sold to a comic book shop. Then 20 more were sold to a shop down the road. Then 30, 40 more. 2,000 newly discovered copies of this rare and sought-after book were sold to comic shops from Berkeley, California to New York City. And every one was counterfeit. This is a story that is not only covered by Dave Sim in a lot of his reprint stuff, but also has a decent run of how they were discovered, how people reacted to them, and why there hasn't been any names named in terms of who did it. Even though I think Dave and his then wife, was it Demi?
Denny Lobert.
Yeah, they had a good idea who did it. The story is just fascinating because, first of all, they talk with David like, why didn't you care? And he's like, well, it wasn't really affecting us because, we got our money from the #1, and I think they were working on the Swords of Cerebus for people that had wanted to jump on board and didn't. And they had nothing to do with the back issue market, because I think a legitimate Cerebus #1 back then was selling for about $200. The comic stores that bought them were allegedly miffed off a little bit because, they bought these things cheap and they were selling them anywhere from $100 to $200. And then, of course, they find out they're counterfeit. And it doesn't sound like a lot of people bothered to cash them back in. But doing some real CSI type deduction, they look at not only the print, but they come to the conclusion that somebody who was a professional printer had to have done the insides, and maybe somebody who did the outsides weren't. And they're basically, if you have any of or yellowing Cerebus #1s, you can just send them to Sean Michael Robinson in his studio in San Diego, and if you just want to get rid of them. Any takers? No? Anyways, it follows up the different conversations, the letters that Denny kept. Some of the letters, I think it first hit the San Francisco Examiner, which I think was that their free press book there?
I don't know.
In 82, I wasn't paying attention. And then, of course, they had called the Buyer's Guide, they had called Comics Journal. Nobody really cared that these were being published. And it wasn't the first book to be, I think this was actually, no, I said that wrong. This is probably the first book that I'm aware of that was counterfeited that way. Cry for Dawn was done that way. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle was done a little later in the decade. And like I said, I think Dave and Denny know who did it, but obviously they can't name them because that would give you off liable, possibility of libel lawsuit. They didn't go after the person even for copyright because they were a small publisher. They don't have that type of money. They can't be sending letters. Hey, your Wolveroach looks too much like Wolverine and we don't want to confuse the kiddies. But this was just a fascinating read, especially with all the extra documentary stuff. So again, go right to that place we were talking before, and you can dig up one of these gems for yourself. Dave's even autographed a few, so if you're so inclined to get that. And you too can find out the secret history of the counterfeit Cerebus #1. Good luck borrowing this, or if you're not a Cerebus fan, you can obviously ignore it. If you're a comic history fan or you like Cerebus, I would say definitely go to that website and go buy it. And check out some of the other cool Cerebus stuff they have because they're all working with Dave to try to have some fun. Cory?
Joe, you've read Watchmen, right?
Yes.
And you know that DC is squeezing every last penny out of Watchmen that they can. That's why we got the Watchmen Companion. Now, most times when there's a companion to a book, it's stories that tie into it. I know with a lot of the big Spider-Man stories, there's the main one like Spider-Geddon, and then there's the Spider-Geddon Companion, which has the tie-in stories that weren't integral to the part of it. Marvel has done a really good job financially of putting out, like Civil War, and then there are all these Civil War tie-in books. So recently, DC put out a book called Watchmen Companion. And what it is a collection of the stuff from the DC role-playing game, which at the time was sanctioned by the original writer. So if you pick this book up, what you will see is the two Watchmen modules that came out for the DC role-playing game in the 80s, as well as a source book, which you could pick up, which had information on each character's weight, height, powers, backstory, etc. They have the art from the role-playing game. Dave Gibbons and some other people put together art. Mostly Dave Gibbons did art for this to, show the characters. They also have the cover and story from Amazing Heroes number 97, which was the first article saying, okay, Watchmen is coming out. Here's what this book will be about. The DC Who's Who of that. The DC Spotlight number 1. DC Spotlight was this magazine that they had, comic size, that was kind of, here's what's coming out in a few months. And that was the first appearance of Watchmen. There is the cover to Comics Journal number 116, which was a Watchmen issue, but they don't have any of the interviews and anything from inside Comics Journal because I guess Gary Groth kind of said, no, you can have Amazing Heroes because that was all fluff and we don't care, but we're still monetizing the interviews. And the only comic in the book itself is the only authorized tie-in to the DC universe. Joe, well, at the time, what was the comic that was an authorized tie-in to Watchmen?
I owe you a dime because I don't know.
Question number 17. Written by Denny O'Neil, drawn by Dennis Cowan, inked by Rick Magar. It is a story about the Question, reading about Rorschach, because Rorschach was based on Steve Ditko's version of the Question. And that entire Question series by Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan was amazing. When they reprint the whole thing, to buy it. This is a borrow with a limited audience. The DC role-playing game has been out of print for almost 30 years now. How's that make you feel? Make you feel old? It should. So a lot of it, well, there's some back matter that came from interviews with Alan Moore, especially when it gets into the history of the world the Watchmen inhabited. So much of it is stuff about, here's the statistics for this character. Here's the battles that you'll have. Here's the flowchart for how to bring your characters through the story. If you've ever played a role-playing game and bought a module, it's a lot like that, where it's basically a story for the person running the game to use to run your characters through it. It does have a lot more history of the Watchmen world, whereas a lot of things that were hinted at in Watchmen, such as that Vietnam was the 51st state, Richard Nixon had gotten rid of the amendment Joe, you're the political science person. What's the amendment that says that the president can only have 2 terms?
Oh, let me Google that one because I don't remember.
But they had repealed that, and Richard Nixon was still president in 1986. This gets into more of that stuff, and it came from interviews with Alan Moore about basically about what the world was like at that
22nd Amendment.
Yep, the 22nd Amendment had been repealed.
Sorry, you people that sleep during history. I do the same thing during math.
I was told there would be no math.
Then we lied.
So the audience for this is incredibly limited. The rest is marketing stuff that was put out at the time, which is all hype. And if you've read Watchmen, you already know everything because this was before the first issue came out. And the comic, the issue of the question, you're not going to buy a $40 hardcover for a single comic that you can dig out of a back issue bin for $3. So this is a borrow if you're interested in this sort of minutia. I suppose it's interesting to have it, but this really feels like a cash grab. And a lot of people who picked this up thinking they're going to get more Watchmen stuff and instead getting all this tie into a role-playing game that went out of print in 1994 is it's going to be a little disappointing. Joe?
Hang on a second. Watchmen role-playing game. Survey says, holy crap. It ranges, some of the modules are $40. Some of the individual ones are $25. I've seen one with Rorschach for $130, even though somebody's got it for $15 on a bid. I'll come back to that. I might have to bid on that. You know me, I love to flip shit. Cory, have you read You Don't Know Jack, Two-Fisted Comic Store Manager?
No, it is but you talked about it last week. I've played the game You Don't Know Jack.
I've seen You Don't Know Jack, but that was a Bruce Campbell tie-in. No, this apparently was a Kickstarter, which I must have jumped on because I got a copy of it. And what's even neater is, well, sort of neat. It's signed by one of the characters, and it features, of course, Jack Van Dyke, the Two-Fisted Comic Store Manager herself. It has the spirit of Dave Sim as a Starfield, and people booing him. And of course, he's go boo yourself. And Carlson, the totally inclusive hand of the former, I guess, Carson Grubenow. This is done very much in the style of Cerebus from Hell. And they do give a warning because apparently there is a what offended Aunt Sadie scale to find out, well, like the first story is a trigger warning for the exploitation of women, 8.2. And if you like Cerebus from Hell, you really got to dig up a copy of this because this thing's hilarious. I went with the copy where he's drawing the Jack the Two-Fisted Comic Store Manager in the 1990s Bad Girl Heroes style, which, as I read last week, she's wondering if those boys ever saw a naked woman without breast implants. I read through this thing, and again, it's a type of humor that you'd expect from Cerebus from Hell. There are none on the eBays. I think, I'm trying to find where this is published. I imagine if you Google it, which, matter of fact, I will here if I can. Isn't this great live action television with high-speed interwebs? So you type in, You Don't Know Jack, Two-Fisted Comic Store Manager, and there's a couple YouTube videos, and you go to indigo.com, which is usually where you go when you can just buy it straight out. And I don't know if copies are available. Mine not only came autographed by Carlson Grubenow, but Dave Sim was supposed to autograph the comic, but he didn't. He autographed a nice card that they addressed to my father, Dad. And I did get a magnet too, or maybe it's a sticker. I don't know. So obviously I bought this one. The caveat is if you're digging Dave Sims' style of humor in Cerebus from Hell, you really got to find a copy of this. And that's about it. Cory, what you got next up for us?
There was a Image book that you said you were going to buy a few months ago. The
Which one?
first 2 issues are out of Department of Truth.
I got number 1. I didn't buy number 2. I may go buy number 2 because it's Cory. Just tell them how good this is.
All right. Department of Truth is written by James Tynion IV, who is also currently the writer on Batman. Drawn by Martin Simmons. And if you are a fan of the X-Files, you must buy this book. The first issue starts out with, of course, the our lead character is what they call a through character. He is being recruited to this new department so that it can all be explained to us, the reader, at the same time as it's being explained to him as the new character. And there have been a number of comics and movies and TV shows and books and video games and everything that posit that what if every conspiracy theory was true? Even one of my favorite comics of all time, The Invisibles, its original pitch was, what if every conspiracy theory is true? This takes that and turns it on its head. The Department of Truth investigates new conspiracy theories because if enough people believe in them, they become true. And what the Department of Truth does is investigates that. I have given away one part of the story, but I'm not giving away all of the cool twists that you will be taken along the way. This is an excellent first issue. And the second issue kind of pulls us back a bit to tell us more about the lead character and why he was recruited and the mystery in his life that we will be learning as we are going through the plot of this story. If you remember, Joe, did you read the X-Files comic in the 90s?
Not as much, because I really didn't get to be an X-Files fan till after David Duchovny started his, I might not be in it, but I'm going to be in it a couple times, maybe, sort of, yeah.
Charlie Adlard, who then, the big thing most people know him for now is The Walking Dead, drew most of those issues, and he did it in the same way as the artist does here, where it looks like, even though it's drawn art, it looks like distorted photographs. So as you read it, the art is... it kind of leaves you off balance. You're trying to figure out what is being shown in it. It's a stylistic choice, and I think it echoes back to that X-Files comic book and that feeling that it gave. You know, the TV show can use light and shadow and camera tricks to make you feel uncomfortable. This art uses different techniques. It's not realistic art. It's very impressionistic, to give you that same feeling. So if you're picking this up looking for your Neil Adams or Jim Lee realism, or even hyper realism, you're not going to get that. This art is more obscure, but it fits the story well. The first issue blew me away. Not just, there are major revelations in that first issue, and each revelation made me go, I want more, and I want it now. But it's not just pure plot. There's character and humor, lots of humor. And the humor is needed because this is a story that could get bogged down very much like the X-Files got bogged down in chasing its own tail. This sets up a premise. We'll see it played out. But the first 2 issues are a definite buy. I would go out, pick up the first issue. If it jumps on you, pick up the trade paperbacks as they come out. Or, you might even be like me and go, I don't know if I can wait for the trade paperbacks. I may have to buy this as a comic, depending on what they put as the back matter. So this is a definite buy. Joe?
And I will say, years from now, or maybe not that long from now, we're going to go, didn't we tell you to buy this one? because if this doesn't become a TV show fast, I'm just throwing my TVs out, because this thing could be such a incredible TV show, although it is kind of controversial, but we'll leave it at that. I give it my thumbs up as well. Cory, have you ever heard of Honky Tonk Sue, the Queen of Country Swing?
I've heard of the Honky Tonk Man.
Okay, that's strike one. Okay, how about the Beatles?
Beatles. I've heard of the Ruddles.
Okay, that's strike two. Well, folks, while you're listening there, we're going to get around to it. How Honky Tonk Sue, the Queen of Country Swing, got the Beatles to reunite and convert to country western. Cory, what is your very first Beatles comic?
The first Beatles comic I bought was the Beatles story, which was put out by Marvel, written by David Allen Kraft and drawn by Jorge Perez.
Yep, and that was probably mine as well. It came out in '78 and very expensive if you can find them. My first one I read to pieces because I'm a Beatle fan. I've been thinking a lot about Beatles lately because my wife and I have the Beatles on Sirius Radio, and she actually they must be doing something weird because they gave her such a good deal. She's going to keep it. More importantly,
they desperately want people to continue to subscribe.
Oh yeah. So we're keeping that. Plus, we can put it on our television. We listen to music on Pandora when we're like working around the house, and now we can put that on our television, and I can listen to the Beatles anytime I want. I can listen to Howard Stern channel. She can us. So on one of the groups that I work on, I think it's Old Men Who Enjoy Comics on Facebook, somebody was talking about Beatles comics. And of course, the first one that comes to mind is the first one they published, which was, and if you hear me rattling things, I am opening up my copy of Dell Giant Size The Beatles. And this thing, my copy is a little, actually this one's pretty, no, there's somebody put tape on the spine. So it's I would probably sell this as a find. The cover's kind of removed. Still got all the glossy pinups, but it dates from 1964. And it gives the Beatles story up to then, talking about all the characters, and everybody gets their own little blurb and how they got together. And again, it's 64. There's not a lot of Beatles story to start with, but I'd really love to know how this sold for Dell, because I mean, copies of this sucker are wildly expensive, and I'm just happy I got one that I can read for that. The next one up was Gold Key. And here I'm gonna crack my mint copy open again. No, it's not really mint, but this is the Beatles Yellow Submarine from Gold Key, and this thing dates. Well, there it is, 1968, which of course came out about the same time the movie did. If you have never read the Gold Key Beatles Yellow Submarine, pick it up, because it is wild. I mean, Yellow Submarine wild, trippy 60s wild, Beatles in Technicolor wild. It kind of follows the story of the movie, but it doesn't. So it's kind of its own unique thing. There's two versions. There's one with a poster that's expensive and one that's without. Still expensive. If you want, you can run over to Titan Books, and I believe you can still get the Beatles Yellow Submarine graphic novel that they just had come out. Was it last year? 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
It is more of a adaptation of the actual movie with gorgeous art. It was William Morrison, wasn't it? Hang on a second while I reach over and grab my copy. Excuse me while I open this up. Let's take a look. Titan Books. Story adaptation by Bill Morrison. Yep. And he did the artwork right off the designs of Heinz Edelman, who did the original artwork, and then different colors, inkers, whatever. So you can, I think you can still get the graphic novel. There are various packages, like they had one deluxe version package I didn't get. More rare is the promo comic that just kind of it's a comic book size that just talks about the Beatles Yellow Submarine, kind of a teaser thing. You could buy it for $10. I don't know if this sucker, let me just type in Yellow Submarine, see if it comes up. We all live in... There it is, Yellow Submarine. So, nope. The Beatles. Yellow Submarine. I guess it was a promo comic from 2018. And I've got one of them. There's 3 different ones. And then, of course, the hardcover that I talked about before. After that, you go to Revolutionary, who did a extremely unauthorized The Beatles Experience. Good luck finding it all. It took me forever to get all 8 issues together. Personality Comics had a bunch of stuff. Another, I don't know, Personality is it looks like it's its own thing. And again, here's the Beatles featuring John Lennon, and then there's the Beatles featuring Ringo Starr, and you can find those. They had Beatle Comics. Beatles versus the Rolling Stones. I found a magazine, Beatles versus the Dave Clark 5, which, again, if you don't know who that is, that was probably a group much like the Beatles way back in the 60s. After that, it's just a matter of finding stuff. There was like a Batman issue that had the Beatles, Strange Tales. The spoof had them on the cover, spoof 3. There was a lot of romance books like Heartthrobs 101 from DC had the Beatles, Brad, with another girl. He doesn't even care that I caught him as they're walking into a Beatles concert. I've got Go-Go and Animals, which had the Beatles on the cover as, I have lots of Beatles in my room, and she's just talking. She has posters and pictures all over the place. Just a lot of Beatle references. Getting back to Honky Tonk Sue. She's the queen of country swing. And this is, I don't even know how you would describe this book because it was just, it's not good. It was kind of like if you and I, Corey, just took pictures and Xerox stories and there were actually 4 issues, but the one in question with the Beatles, because nobody was paying attention to it when it was published way back in '79, it's like $100. So you can get and even the other ones are rare and scarce, like $30 books. But this one, because it's got the Beatles on it, is and in it is just wildly expensive. And of course, I found a copy rather beat up for only $13 because I figured I would read it for you folks, and so you wouldn't have to. Again, if this was published by somebody, Bob Bose Bell, he did the art as well. 4 issues just for whatever. This is not the best of things. As a Beatle collector, I picked it up to add it to my other Beatle comics. But boy, this run just ain't good. You could probably ignore Honky Tonk Sue if you could find cheap copies. Like these are the type of things. Corey's always like, "How do you find these things?" Well, these are the type of books somebody's going to find this book and just throw it in the quarter bin somewhere. And if you can find them, pick them up because you can flip them on eBay easier. Take a read. It might be up your alley. For me, the art was subpar. The story was blah. And by the way, she does get the Beatles together to reunite as a country western band. So you don't have to go and pay $100 to do it. On the scale we always use, I just say ignore this one. If you're a Beatle fan, good luck hunting it down because this is kind of a rarity and an oddity. Almost all the books that you find, including a lot of the romance books from the 60s and 70s with the Beatles, are hard to find because they appeal to Beatles fans the way you'll find Elvis fans digging up Elvis stuff. So again, kind of one of those cross, how would you say it? A cross collector.
Promote? Oh, cross collector. Yeah.
Yeah. Beatle guys and Honky Tonk Sue collectors. So there, I did it so you don't have to. Corey?
The next book that I have is one that is not finished yet.
Uh-oh.
What? And that is Star Trek Deep Space Nine Too Long a Sacrifice from IDW. When we talked about comics on our poll list last week, I talked about how I like what IDW is doing. Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek series. And it has not gotten a whole lot of love from books and tie-ins and comics, and there was never a Deep Space Nine movie. But this is a Deep Space Nine comic written by Scott Tipton and David Tipton, drawn by Greg Scott, and it is a 4-issue miniseries, and it's a murder mystery. An ambassador has been killed on Deep Space Nine, and Odo is attempting to find out who did it. Because this is an ambassador and because the stakes tend to get higher as things go on, Worf joins his investigation. And we're halfway through. It is a solidly done murder mystery that uses all of the Deep Space Nine characters. It is set during the TV series. So spoilers for a story that came out 22 or 23 years ago. Captain Sisko isn't dead yet. What?
Well, he didn't die. He got sucked up by the space aliens in the wormhole. The prophets.
Well, you know, he's not around anymore. The art is not the best. Usually, because I'm a fan of his art and because he's a local boy, Gordon Purcell, I tend to compare a lot of the art in Star Trek comics to Gordon Purcell. Gordon was excellent at using likenesses without making it seem like he's tracing a photo. These are likenesses that the photo reference is a little too spot on, in that many times the characters have the same expression from panel to panel rather than changing their expression. Another thing about this book is that it's a murder mystery. It's Star Trek. There's not a lot of you can't go and then they fight for 7 pages. Nope. It's a lot of talking heads. And it's hard for some artists to do talking heads books, but the artist here uses differing layouts, differing camera shots, different techniques to keep the story moving visually as well as the actual story itself. Talking heads can be very boring for an artist if they don't vary things up. I think when we had Angel Medina on, he talked about how he was given a Venom story, and either the second or the third issue was just people just standing around and talking the whole time. He was like, I don't draw a Venom story to do a bunch of talking heads. I do a Venom story to have big fight scenes and horror scenes and you know, Venom getting all creepy with people rather than Eddie Brock standing around talking to somebody. This is a lot of standing around and talking to somebody, but the artist is able to keep it visually interesting. It's another problem I have with stories like this is that it's going to be $4 an issue. And then when it's collected, it's going to actually be $20 for the 4-issue miniseries in a trade paperback. So the price is a little hefty for what you get. You could pick up a Deep Space Nine paperback novel that's cheaper and gives you a longer read. So this is very much a, when it's in the library, check it out. It's a borrow, not a buy. Because another thing is, because it's a mystery, mysteries don't have a lot of reread potential. You don't go back and reread a mystery when you already know who done it, unless there's a whole bunch of really cool twists. So Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Too Long a Sacrifice is a borrow. And now, Joe, your final book.
I can't find it. Hang on a second. Oh, there it is. I'm trying to get my Beatles. Cory, you remember when I talked to you about Menage a Trois or 3 from Udon Press?
Yes.
How much I loved it. It was good cartoony art. You could follow along. A lot of sexual innuendos, just funny, punny sexual situations. Another one came by which I recommended, and I believe it's on volume 2. It's called Unsacred by Mirka Andolfo, and this is from Ablaze Press. The basic storyline is a demon and an angel fall in love. Sure, they do. Let's put it this way: the demon wants nothing better than to bang his big, busted angel girlfriend, and she wants to save herself for when they get married. And let the hijinks ensue. This is like Three's Company on acid. This is like any number of teen comedies and Ménage à Trois, just amped up to devilish or angelic proportions. And I had to spit laugh. I had to be careful because as I'm sitting on my porch drinking, I had to be careful that I didn't spit take my juice of choice all over my comic because I was just laughing so hard, and it was just a blast. 6 issues are out, and I believe the miniseries is in book form. And it sounded like it was going to probably be a regular series, and then of course printing got in the way. The way what was going on with the printers and the publishers and the distributor, because they say in next issue Ablaze number 7, but they started out with a number 1 again, which I believe might be out. I've got to look because I get all my box stuff once a month, so you should be able to find Unsacred. There's a lot of different miniseries from Naughty to Nice. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. There's a lot of different variant covers ranging from Naughty to Nice. All of them are shown when you look in the preview, so you can choose the one you want. The art is fun. The characters are easy to follow along. The jokes and surprises are just a blast. And they did something that normally pisses me off, but in this case, it didn't bother me so much. Ablaze put previews of their other series in the back to kind of fill it up, because really while the stories are real panel inclusive and there's a lot of reading, so you're not gonna. It took me about 2 hours to go through 6 issues, and normally a standard comic I can rip through in about 10 minutes if I don't have to read a lot or ponder the pictures or anything like that. But at the end, they gave 9-page previews of some of the other stuff, and it caught my attention because the first one they did was Gung Ho, which was by Benjamin von Eckeltsberg and Thomas von Kumant. And it looks like a bunch of guys sitting on a train as they're going through what they call the danger zones, and they end up in a...
Wait, is there a highway to the danger zone?
Doesn't look like it. It looks like just a train. Sorry. Highway. But when they get there, the first thing that happens is they try to take away all their stuff. And yeah, that's all we need is Tom Cruise mad at us.
The danger zone.
So I was kind of intrigued by that. I might have to look for it. The other 2 issues had Vampire State Building number 4 9-page preview, and that is one that I not only recommended, but I think I'm going to. I think I just bought it as a trade paperback or whatever is coming out of in the paperback book. So we'll probably run into that. Then they covered one that I think I don't recall, Cory, if you were picking up the Queen of Black Coast, the Conan European ones.
Yes.
So they give a good preview of that, which was kind of fun. And then in the last issue, they covered the Sumerian Red Nails number 1. Again, 9-page previews that did what they're supposed to do. They got me interested in other books that I may or may not pick up if I can get to my friendly neighborhood comic store, which is what they should do. It didn't feel to me like they were padding the story, because Unsacred itself was just a blast to read. I mean, if you like that type of quirky sexual innuendo type humor, which obviously I do, I definitely say buy this. And again, if you can't find the actual issues, and none of the issues are rarer than the others, there's probably a few exclusive issues out there, so you can always sidestep those, because you can order any cover you want when you look at previews. I don't know if the graphic novel is out yet. And again, they're starting out with volume 2 because of all the COVID fun. Rather than just start with a 7, start with #1 and continue going. The relationship goes forward. It's not stuck in the adolescent humor, because obviously when they first meet, it's very much the oh, you're kind of cute and you're a nice guy because you're not pawing at me, and he's like, oh my god, I want to paw at you, and it's just I just found it delightful, just like I did the other one, the Menage a 3 from Unden. There's a couple wild and sexy books you could pick up and just enjoy for some light fun reading. I doubt this will ever be a TV show, so that'll be your only chance to try it. There, I think I said enough without giving away too much. Cory, what's your final one for today?
This is a big one. X of Swords. This is the big crossover for the X-Men books now that they've been going for a while. X of Swords. So I've read the first 4 parts, which is, let's see here, Excalibur #12, X-Men. Let's see, which issue of the X-Men is that? I believe it is X-Men #12. Yep, X-Men #12. X of Swords Creation #1. And X Factor #4. The story is that Apocalypse is building Gateway on Krakoa, which is the island that all the mutants are on now. Apocalypse is building gateways not just to elsewhere on the Earth, but to other dimensions. And he goes into a dimension that he had traveled to a long time ago that has a bunch of his children in it. And rather than being happy to see him, they declare war. Saturnine, who is the Lord of the Otherworld, which is a concept that comes from Captain Britain. It was created by the original writer, Alan Moore, and Alan Davis during their run on Captain Britain. Chris Claremont picked it up and used it a lot in his version of Excalibur. Well, now it's being used here. Saturnine has manipulated things so that these two forces will meet in Otherworld. It explains that if you die in Otherworld, you cannot be resurrected. And rather than these two dimensions going to war, each side will pick 10 champions, and they will battle on Otherworld. If you have not read the new version of the X-Men with Jonathan Hickman's restart of the franchise, that's okay. This story gives you all the information you need. You may need to look up a character here and there in Wikipedia because there are so many, but everything is laid out in these stories. The art is excellent. It's very much that new kind of crowded mix of the Neil Adams manga style, but everybody is recognizable. Everything flows really well. The coloring is a little dark for me because it makes everything look gloomy and despairing. And the other thing is, in a lot of these crossovers, it's here's the main story and everything else is kind of a, well, this character's reacting to stuff that's going on in the main story. This is, because it's Jonathan Hickman, of course, it's very well planned. The characters are all laid out in creation as to what they need to do. The story is basically going to move through all of these characters, come back into a central book, then go out and come back into a central book. Kind of like what he did during his Avengers run when he had the Avengers fighting in space, and Thanos saw this as an opportunity, so they did the Infinity crossover while the Avengers were out in space, and then it collided again. He's using that same sort of circular, almost if you were to take and draw an infinity symbol, that's the layout of how the story will run through the books, which of course, because it's Jonathan Hickman, he does stuff like that. He's a design expert. I gave up on the X-Men in the 90s. It had gotten too convoluted. I came back when Grant Morrison and Chris Claremont took over the franchise again. I liked it then, but eventually they sort of pissed it all away and went back to that 90s style of too many characters, too many books, too much not laid out for the reader. Everything is laid out for the reader in this, but it's not easy. It's not, you have to pay attention as you're reading. You have to sort of put pieces together in your head from the book itself. It's not like you have to go, oh yeah, that happened way back a long time ago. It's more, oh, I saw that back on this page. That sort of revelation you get, which to me is one of the ways I can discern a writer who's great at planning versus one who's just kind of making it up seat of his pants. The first 4 issues really hooked me on this. They will be putting out a hardcover, which is the size of an omnibus when it's done, because it's 24, 26 parts.
Yeah.
But if you like the X-Men, this is a very cool idea. They've raised the stakes. They've given an explanation why the rules have not changed, but in this other area, the rules are going to be different. And it's everything that a good comic book crossover should be. It's exciting, it's interesting, and it gives the characters stakes. There's a reason they need to do this, and there are consequences if they fail. Speaking of reasons you need to do this, Joe, we are in the holiday season. The Hallmark Channel has started with their countdown to Christmas, so there are tons of movies of pretty blonde girls going to their hometown and falling in love with hunky guys with a slightly tragic black backstory as their parents approvingly look on as everything is resolved at a Christmas parade or a Christmas dinner. But Christmas isn't great for everybody. And what we do here at the Solitaire Rose Network is from the end of Halloween until Christmas, we highlight different charities that we think you should support during this time. And here's the ones we have. See, we don't do ads during Christmas because we're not into the crass commercialization. We want to help people.
No,
and I want to help people. I want to help people alleviate their boredom. So I've done all these other podcasts that they can listen to. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network is currently on a pause, basically because COVID-19 has made it so that I have to work a lot of extra hours at both jobs. But you can still go and listen to my other podcasts. Now, you're probably listening to Crazy Comics and Stories, which is the main podcast. But on this same feed, KRAYZCOMIX, is Solitaire Rose Radio, the solo radio podcasts that I do. I've done interviews, I've done short stories, I've done all sorts of things, and you can get to it right here on this same feed. I also do a podcast called Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's over at novels.solitairerose.com. Dangerous Dan Moore and I, and of course Wolfie B. Bad, give you bad advice over at badadvice.solitairerose.com. You send in your questions, and we give you the aforementioned bad advice. And then myself and Adam Vermillion from For the Love of Comics do the Fantastic Forecast at fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com, where we go through the issues of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time, to give the plot and commentary on each issue. That's not all. Yes, I'm crazy. I still, over at pwinsiderelite.com, every week on Wednesday, do a recap of the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. I write up what happened, and then myself and Anthony Pyrus will do an audio. Now, you can only listen to the audio, if you remember, at pwinsiderelite.com, and if you're a wrestling fan, you should be, where we then break down the episode, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, give it a grade, and let you know if you should have watched that episode. Those are the other podcasts here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network. Thanks. And you, Joe, want to alleviate people of their money.
Damn straight.
So now we get to Joe's favorite part of the show. No, not where he washes himself with Fireball, which can get really tingly in some of his naughty
It
bits.
is. Woohoo.
No, it's Joe. What's going
like
on the
tingle.
eBays?
Oh, eBay. Yeah. Well, I got to admit, I really bought a lot of comics in the last 4 months. No, I'm really. What's my number one goal, Cory?
Own everything, sell everything, buy everything.
Well, actually, I just want enough so I can move out of the house and move into.
Okay.
And I've been trying for years. I'm sure a lot of our long-term listeners, especially when I was going through the purge stage from the great purge of 2018, where I actually got rid of about 20 boxes, or was it 30? I forget. There were a lot of boxes of comics, but I just keep buying stuff. And a lot of the fun is running across things I've never seen before. Sometimes it's off of eBay, like I talked about the Honky Tonk Sue. And if I saw a Honky Tonk Sue at a decent price in a quarter box, I would dive on it like Oprah on a canned ham. But some of the stuff we went through, Cory was watching when we were back at, I think, Nerding Out, and he was selling a bunch of stuff. And I was just picking up stuff like crazy because I'd never seen him and I never heard of him before. So I went through and I read some of it, and some of it didn't make the grade. Some of it I'm keeping. A couple of the books I put on eBay, and they sold like bam right away. And then you're thinking, oh my Lord, maybe I sold them too cheap. But I try to be fair about it. The first one was Junior Miss number 28 from 1947, and there were not any on eBay. And when you look it up, I had to use both Atomic Avenue and Overstreet Price Guide, because Junior Miss was weird, because when it first came out, the first issue had Frank Sinatra and Jane Allison's life story. But then the next issue wasn't until issue number 24. Cory, can you tell the good folks what happened to issue 2 through 23?
There was there was a real hot book, super hot book.
Hot.
It was Human Torch.
Yep. They think.
By the way, what was the first issue?
The first issue?
Does Joe know? Yeah, what was the first issue of the Human Torch?
Well, it was called Junior Miss.
Oh, the first issue of the Human Torch. You said that the Human Torch went from issue 2 on up. What was issue 1?
It was Junior Miss number 1.
No. Human Torch number 1 was never printed. They took over because what they used to do, they would change the name of a series and use the same post office, because you had to pay in order to send out for a subscription. You would pay a certain amount, and then you would get some sort of postal grant so that you could send stuff out for a subscription. And Comics, especially timely, would change the name of a book to try and sneak that new series through without having to buy a new postal certificate. Well, the first issue of the Human Torch was Red Raven Comics number 1.
Ah. Because, yeah, they go here, when you're looking at the Overstreet number 24, their question, was it formerly the Human Torch number 23? Which would make sense, because 23 was the last issue of Human Torch, and then suddenly Junior Miss reappears at number 24 and ends up going up to 39. So not quite sure what it goes to after that. So it went from Human Torch, which was, I guess, superhero, to kind of a teen humor type thing, featuring somebody, Cindy Smith, who was a fairly attractive, and Lord knows I never saw girls like that when I was a teenager, redhead. And of course, her boyfriend, Chuck Rivers, was constantly baffled. The cover of the issue I sold has her as admonishing her boyfriend, Chuck Rivers, when you said you had seats on the 50-yard line for the big game, you didn't say they were in the stratosphere, because they're obviously on the very top of a stadium, as some guys coming up going, parachutes, oxygen masks, and hilarity ensued. So just another Marvel one. How Overstreet and other people figured this stuff out, would be a story to ask Bob if you ever were able to corner him.
A lot of the research is done by Dr. Michael Vassallo, who has written a number of books on Timely.
And even to this date, they're just not sure, but it makes sense, like you said. Well, this one stopped at 23, this one started at 24, and for the same reason you just mentioned here. Another one that I sold that was another Timely Marvel was called Georgie #9. And this one was only in fair shape. This surprised me that it sold fast, but maybe not because there's just not a lot of them around. This one, the cover was actually detached. And the person I sold it to was quite happy to get it because I don't think he believed he'd ever see it. This one actually does start with a #1, and it started in spring 45, and it goes all the way up to number 39 again in 52. And it goes from Georgie with Judy to just Georgie. And when I had the #9, it was just Georgie. And I'm not quite sure who that was that Georgie was setting loose a mechanical mouse. So, because as you all know, back then, the woman would just jump helplessly into your arms, terrified of the mouse scurrying across the floor as he just looks back at us and winks. So, and hijinks ensue.
So would an elephant. So you had to be careful.
Wait a minute.
To scare the girl and not the elephant, because the elephant would jump in your arms too, and that'll kill you.
Well, actually, I thought I saw in Bugs Bunny. He just picked you up and then tried to beat the mouse with you. So yeah, either way, you got to be careful. So I'm just looking here in the Overstreet to see Georgie Comics. See all teen and teen comics. So it must have continued. Again, changing the name back and forth. So, and if you go to #6, if you can find it, because I was selling a lowly #9, he visits Timely Comics. So that might be a fun one just to pick up and read. If you can find one that someone has in CGC'd or, is so beat up or is in such great shape that you're going to pay hundreds of dollars for. So that was kind of fun. Cory, we'll have to look up on Marvel Unlimited. I have no idea if these are on there. Have you looked at their golden age? I mean, do they have a decent golden age, or is it just what you'd expect?
Anything that has been reprinted as a Marvel masterwork is available in their golden age. There are no romance books that I can find. There are a few Millie the Model and Patsy Walker, but none of the romance. Very little of the war books. That's why the book by Dr. Vassalaro, Doc V as we call him, is such a treasure trove because it's a bunch of stuff that hasn't been reprinted.
Did you ever were these covered like in the collecting comic series? Like I had you got me the 80s and I bought the 90s. Did you ever read the golden age ones or?
Yeah, in the 50s, they talk a little about romance books, but I imagine most of that, the 40s are going to be 2 books. There's one out already, which is 1940 to 1944, and then 45 to 49. Romance books came about in, I think it was 47 when Jack Kirby created the genre. Yes, there were no romance comics before Jack Kirby did a romance book. He created the entire genre because he looked at the pulp magazines and went, wow, look at all these romance pulps. There aren't any romance comics. There's a market that we should hit.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the covers of these courtesy of atomicavenue.com. And it's kind of interesting because Georgie goes from a pudgy-faced boy, and again, this is more teenage shenanigans. And then you look at some of the later ones, like up around 51, you can definitely see they're turning Archie-esque. So, and I see this too on other ones like Swing with Scooter. I found some Swing with Scooters in our travels, and from the way he was drawn in the first issues to the later issues, same thing with Millie the Model. They very much were copying the Archie style, going after that audience. So
later, It started as one type of book. And then sometime in the 60s, they changed the style to look like Archie. Because if you read the early 60s Millie the Model, they're very much kind of
An adventure type thing.
Soap opera.
They were in the fashion industry, and they were doing this. And even, like I said, the Georgie comics, they didn't go beyond, what was the last one published? They didn't go beyond 52. And you can, just by looking at the covers, you can see not quite Archie, but there was definitely a simpling. Am I saying that right? The artist style got simpler. It wasn't so detailed. It wasn't so, I want to say, almost gregarious from the earlier Golden Age issues. So, and maybe it was just, I get, you might know better than I. Maybe it was just the time, the way it was. Just don't draw so much detail. Just bang them out, get them out. So, but just kind of an interesting couple inadvertent Marvel books. I just picked them up because they were cheap and I'd never seen them before. And believe me, if I had time to go back, there were a lot more I'd love to pick up. But I think by now he's probably got a lot of these priced out. For you, though, you could go check out what I didn't keep because they're all on my eBay site. I finally got through them all. Crazy, Krayz. Let me know you're a listener of this here show. I had somebody send me a ridiculous offer on a comic book. And if you send me a ridiculous offer, like say it's $100 comic and you say you're giving me 10, I'll send you back one counter offer for $99.98. And then he said, well, I thought you said you give deals. And I said, you said you did that on the podcast. And I said, well, A, I'm crazy, not stupid. And B, you got to tell me this ahead of time. And eventually we figured out a price. So I'm crazy. I'm not stupid. And everything's up and ready to rock 24/7. Come get some.
And now we get to my. No, not where I quit paying attention to Joe and watch reruns of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart to make me feel that life used to be better, and it was. No, it's Freaking and Geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on?
Well, I mentioned earlier watching Doctor Who on HBO Max. I got to tell you, HBO Max, your interface sucks. I had the damnedest time. I had to call my daughter downstairs because here's what happened. Okay, we're watching Doctor Who from the Eccleston era, my wife and I. I'm also watching the current stuff that Jodie Whittaker doing. And when we went to go try to get back to watch some of the Eccleston stuff, and it just kept coming up, her next episode in her series. There was virtually no way that I could figure out how to break out of that show and get to a different season or a different episode. It's like they were so locked into, this is your next episode, you're going to watch it. My daughter come down, she said, yeah, really what you got to do is you've got to search almost for Doctor Who via the search engine, have it pop up, and then you can go from season to season. So now, the next time I get on HBO Max, it's going to be in the Eccleston stuff, and I'll have to do the same rigmarole to get back into season 13 or wherever I am. I don't know what it is, but yeah, you could simplify it. How? Well, let's just see. When I'm on Hulu or Netflix, if I end up getting on a episode I don't want, I just keep hitting the down button on my remote, and eventually it goes to the bar, where you can fast forward and backwards, and then go one more. And it stops the episode and then kicks into that episode, and then also shows you, do you want more episodes? And so just a hint, I'm giving, the multi-billion-dollar company ideas that they should have thought of to begin with. Oh, well. I'm losing my track of my notes. Did I bitch about my getting a temporary cap?
No.
Oh yeah,
You talked a little about it last week.
Oh okay, yeah, no, it's I'm stupid. Okay, do you want to put on a temporary cap now, or just let it sit until we get the real one in? I'm like, do a temporary cap. Either way, what they do is they drill, they numb you up real good, although it wasn't good enough. because as the doctor was busy poking around with the drill, like, oh God, that was a sound I didn't want to hear since my kids, whatever. See, the problem I have, okay, I'm 55. Back in the 70s, when you had a cavity, they basically evacuated the entire tooth and filled it with silver. What that does for an old fart like me now is the tooth is really weak. Way back when I was stationed in, was I doing the show? Were we doing the show when I was in Washington, D.C. for 7 months?
I don't know if we were or not. It's so long ago.
It
Don't
was.
make me think back to the past.
I think it was actually, because, no, it had to have been afterwards, because I think the first time I actually went anywhere was when I ended up going up to Dillingham for the first time, which is why in those early episodes there's such a goofy delay all the time. It's not our fault. But what happened was when I was on deployment, I started getting a pain in my tooth, and I'm thinking, oh, well, if I complain about it, they're going to send me home. I'll just chew on the other side of my mouth. I get back to see my dentist. He goes, oh, yeah, your tooth is cracked. And eventually they take it out, and he explained to me what the dentist had done. So pretty much all my teeth, and I think I've had 2 or 3 since then, I start feeling that same feeling. I know what it is. The tooth is cracked just from eating. I don't eat a lot of hard things. My days of chewing bricks are over. Thank God for cereal. But yeah.
So you don't eat grape nuts anymore?
I don't even think, did they make grape nuts? I haven't seen them.
Oh, hell yes.
Oh, nope, grape nuts for me. I have to wait till I have to wait till puffed rice is soggy before I can even chew it now. And so anyways, I went in last Monday and I got the cap done, and that was like an hour and a half of drilling the tooth and shaping it. And, I just have to get myself in a happy spot and just relax. So, but that was just the temporary crown. It's stuck to my tooth with not a quite permanent cement. So it's kind of like if I eat something hard or something sticky, and I'm looking at you, box of Milk Duds I so love chewing on when I watch a movie. I buy them at Target because it's only $1, but that's a different subject. Now the other fun thing, normally you go about 1 or 2 weeks. It takes them about 2 weeks because they make a copy of your tooth, the surface, and they send it in, and they make the cap for you. Well, usually takes about 2 weeks. The problem is I can't get to them until the 30th. We're recording this as of the 2nd. I actually had my temporary cap put on a week ago. Matter of fact, the last podcast we were talking about, I had just finished. The mouth was a little numb, but not so numb that I couldn't talk and make it fun to listen to. So basically, I'm going like in over a month with a temporary cap, which is definitely not advisable. The reason why, like I said, next week I've got 2 weeks of TSA training, sir, in checkpoint, and then I'm actually on vacation for Thanksgiving. My wife and I are just going to escape craziness, just go up north for a little bit, and I actually have it strategically planned. So this time when I go up north, I will hit the comic stores and the shops when they're open. Matter of fact, I'll probably hit them on the way back because that'll be a Wednesday, and we all know it's new comics on Wednesday, so I can actually pick up some stuff. And then, of course, we'll have Thanksgiving, and then, of course, Black Friday, and we'll have our get-together shenanigans with Butch and Lisa, hopefully, and somebody else. I forget what his name is. I'm sure I'll think about it as it comes in.
I invited the boy.
Oh, boy, yeah, he'll really want to hang with a bunch of old farts.
Well, I don't think there'd be room for him and his bride, but I did let him know that we hit all these used bookstores because that's one of the things that he and his lovely bride do on their date nights is they go to used bookstores because she works in a library and he's become a massive reader. Gosh, I wonder where that came from.
I'm shocked, I tell you.
And they've been hitting the used bookstores, and I said, come along with us. We know where the deals are.
And if we're lucky, and I don't know if it's then or later, but Half Price usually does their coupon sale.
Yes.
And I don't know, I think it's
And
after.
you get your catalog, you get your calendar if you buy enough,
Yeah.
where you get coupons for the whole year.
We didn't get last year because when we got to the source and they were doing dollar graphic novels, yeah, that pretty much blew the night for us. They were nice enough to cut the books out for us, though.
I went the next day and got my calendar.
I should have had you pick me up one because I never did make it back. Oh, well. Anyways, it's going to be, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, November's already over. And off podcasting, I'll talk with Cory. Will I be available to actually podcast, or will we have to run the dreaded fill-ins? Well, we'll figure it out. So that's all I'm freaking on. How about you, Mr. Strode?
Everyone is freaking out about the election. Everyone is freaking out about the election. There are people using caravans to stop people from voting. There are stores that are boarding up their windows because they think that after the election there are going to be riots. Everybody online is freaking out. And here I am. I'm recording a podcast. It is 8:10 on election night eve. I did not watch any news over the weekend at all.
Nope.
I'm not going to watch any news tonight at all.
Nope.
I am not going to watch any news tomorrow until I get back from the gym, and I'll watch Stephen Colbert do a comedy show on Showtime so he can curse. There are a few things I want to point out. No matter who wins, people will be pissed. No matter who wins, that doesn't mean the work is over to make this a better place to live. No matter who wins, the grocery stores will still be open. The comic shops will still get their books every Wednesday, and we will still have a podcast every Monday. It is not the end of the world. It's not even the end of the country. It's not even the end of most of the stuff you like. Yes, I prefer one candidate over another, but they've ratcheted up to apocalypse levels, and it's freaking everybody out. Everyone I know, no matter what side they're on, is freaking out about this. And when I was younger and I was much more politically angry, I felt the same way. And now I've learned that no matter who wins, that's just the start. You got to do the work. So I am also freaking out about...
Not to mention, if you are freaking out that this is the end of the country, I find your lack of faith in your country disturbing.
One of the things that they did over the weekend, and with my phone service and everything, is they're really pushing you to sign up for new subscription services, for new streaming services. T-Mobile is giving me Shudder for a month free. Night Flight. Joe, do you remember the Night Flight on USA Network in the 80s?
Not as much, but I do recall it.
They have a streaming service that shows the kind of weird offbeat movies that they used to do, the syndicated series, the rock and roll documentaries and stuff. And you can subscribe to that. They had a thing over the weekend where if you use this code, you would get it for, half price. And I went to the website to subscribe, and I clicked subscribe thinking, and then on the next screen I put in the code. There was never a place to put in the code. So I emailed them and said, hey, there was no place to put in the code. Can you apply this code and get back to me? It's been 3 days, nothing. The Shudder site, you get a month free. You have to give them your credit card. You have to do this. You have to do this. And I understand that. But, boy, you had to open this and go here and do this and put in this code and then do this to get the month free instead of 7 days. If you want people to sample your stuff, make it easy. If you're giving a discount to get people to subscribe, make it easy. The way it is now, Shudder, once my month is over, because they made it so hard and I had to spend a half hour to get a month free instead of 7 days, I've already got the reminder on my Google calendar 3 days before to unsubscribe. Now, I would have subscribed if it was easy, because they got a lot of stuff where I go, they've got enough here that I could spare, you know, $2-3 a month for this. But if you're going to make it so hard because you want to trap people into subscribing and staying subscribed forever, no, screw you. Not interested. My phone company gave me Quibi for 6 months, Joe. Do you know what?
They're always giving you stuff. You don't give away net. You don't even give away pie. How did you rate?
Because T-Mobile desperately wants people to stay with them, so they give away free stuff every Tuesday. Joe, do you know what the Quibi is?
I think Chris got offered it. I know if I got offered it, I went, whatever.
It is a subscription service that has short 10-minute stories, 10-minute shows.
Yeah, that rings a bell. That's probably why I didn't bother.
To watch on your phone or tablet. They don't have a Roku app. They don't have any. You can't watch it on a computer. You can only watch it on your mobile device. Well, I got 6 months free, and now I know why, because, let's see, I got 6 months free starting in October. No new stuff after November 1st, and they're shutting down on December 1st. They ran out of money. So, and the last thing I am freaking on, when I first moved here, there were 2 free newspapers, and where I come from, the only free newspaper was the one that you got that was nothing but ads for farm auctions, or the college newspaper. But here in the Twin Cities, when I moved here in '87, there were 2. There was City Pages and the Twin Cities Reader. And what they were alternative newspapers. They did stories that the quote mainstream media unquote wouldn't cover. They had a leftist bent. They kind of did what was called muckraking, where they would dig through files and look for the dirt, look for the politicians who are, doing dirty, or businesses that are doing things unethically. They had reviews of local bands. They would have a calendar of here's what all the different music venues are doing, and here are all the movies that are coming out, and here are all the plays, and this. And they were sustained by a huge classified ad section. And unlike the regular newspaper, they would take everything. Yes, they would have ads for 900 numbers. They would have ads for escort services. They would have personals ads, some of which were, I want to meet a nice guy and fall in love, and some were what I want to meet a nasty girl in a hotel room to do terrible things to each other. In the 90s, there wasn't really enough classified ad traffic for both to survive, so City Pages ate up Twin Cities Reader, and they combined. And then as the ad market kind of fell apart a little more in the late 90s, City Pages got bought by the Village Voice. And then the Village Voice went bankrupt, and the local newspaper, the Star Tribune, bought the City Pages, and they were actually putting out City Pages through the Star Tribune. The Star Tribune, if you read the City Pages back in the 80s and 90s, it would have blown your mind that at one point the Star Tribune would be publishing them. Well, last week, everyone at the City Pages was laid off after the Wednesday issue came out. City Pages has been shuttered. It is no more. It's gone. And one of the things about City Pages was it was where I went to find stuff to do. Yes, there was the Best of the Twin Cities, which was an issue every year, which had their picks as well as what the readers had picked. But every week it would be, this band is coming here, and the last time they were in town, they were like this. Or this new local act is around, here's what their music is like. Or here are the plays that aren't at the Guthrie or the Jungle. These are the smaller plays. Here's what they're like. Their investigative articles were long. They were detailed. I haven't read an investigative piece in the Star Tribune in years because there's no money in it. They can't pay a reporter a salary for 6 months, 8 months, a year to dig into this. So a huge part of local Twin Cities investigative journalism is gone. promotion for local artists, creators, bands, bookstores, plays, that's gone. And at least once a year, they would have a comics issue where they would go to local cartoonists, give them a theme, and have them do 1 to 4 page comics. And that's gone too. And it's a real shame.
Where am I going to get my Dan Savage fix? I know, online, just like everybody else, but still.
So, what are you geeking on, Joe?
I'm having kind of a mini freak because I just realized Tom Tolles, the political cartoonist, put out his.
He retired this week.
Yeah, which I absolutely loved his stuff. I did just get an email from Kelly of the MCBF. Tentative dates for the con next year, May 15th and 16th for Spring Con, and October 9th for Fall Con. So that's direct from him to me to you, even as I sit here, because sometimes I too fall asleep when Cory talks. As far as geeking, I've been kind of bitter about having to go to Checkpoint. I do have to admit my first week wasn't too bad. I'm at Terminal 2, or for those of you who've been in Minnesota forever, the Hubert H. Humphrey Terminal. On one of my days, I actually saw an old friend come through. She is a flight attendant with Sun Country, so it was actually awesome to see she was working. Because, of course, being an airline employee isn't the best right now. So to see her was fun, and of course the corresponding hugs were equally as fun. The people are very nice. I had a great talk with the manager. I told him my fears is that I don't want to be the one to cause an incident. I take what I do very, very seriously because of, we're trying to stop the bad guy, folks. We don't want another 9/11. We don't want a Pan Am Flight 93 where it's hijacked and flown into the ground. We don't want the Lockerbie bomb over Scotland where something's put in luggage and it's blown up by Libyans. So I just want to make sure I'm trained okay. And like I said, it's coming up. So the biggest problem I have is everything I know is 5 years out of date. And they're working with me. Fortunately, it's a little slower, so that works to my advantage so that I can get my feet, hit the ground running. And again, after the 2 weeks of training, I'll probably, other than bitching about the fact I got to get up early again because I ain't no AM guy. Anyways, that's going pretty good. I mentioned Doctor Who. My wife and I are enjoying the Eccleston stuff. Every time I watch this stuff, of course, the two things that come to mind are, if he'd have done the was it the 50th anniversary special that they introduced John Hurt as the War Doctor?
Yes.
I got my War Doctor action figure behind me, so that's kind of cool. It would have been cool. And of course, I know how this all ends up, and watching it with my wife, trying not to spill information. She did watch with me up into the Matt Smith era, and then she kind of faded off because she really loved David Tennant, and she did not attach to Matt Smith as much as I did. And I really wanted her to because I feel the payoff for the Matt Smith Doctor is amazing. If they had decided not to go beyond that, that would have been a good way to end. Because she's asking me questions, wait a minute, we see Daleks again, don't we? Yeah. Do they ever cover the Time Lords? I don't know. I don't remember. We'll just keep watching and find out. So that's kind of fun. I did see on HBO Max, there's a bunch of Godzilla films. Ooh, what fun. And just so it goes to show people are listening to our podcast after my bitter bitch last week about in stock graphic novels not shipping my order. They did. I've got all my Invincibles hardcovers 6 through 12. And believe me, Cory, it was very tough having to do the homework for this here podcast, knowing I could be reading some Invincible goodness. And as I said earlier, tomorrow I'll be sitting on the porch, letting the 3-season sun warm me up. And I'm just going to plow through these things. I am just really excited to read this, or I'll be doing like I am now. I'm downstairs. The basement really's turned cold. It used to be just warm down here, but now that the weather's changed, it turns cold. So I actually got a space heater warming my feet. So that should be fun. Cory, what you geeking on?
On Halloween, I was reading the Marvel Horror Lives Again, and it's the Frankenstein monster and some of the other short-run Marvel horror books, and a lot of the black and white stuff. And a few years ago, I would say almost like, I say a few years ago, and now I feel old because I actually remember I got the last few back in the early 2000s. I wanted to get all of the Marvel black and white mags from the 70s. You know, I'm not going to get Savage Tales #1 or sort of Savage Sword of Conan #1, but, you know, the ones that were reasonable. And I have read the entire run of those magazines a few times. And a lot of it now is available. All the Planet of the Apes stuff was reprinted by Boom. Marvel is reprinted. They didn't reprint, okay, here's Vampire Lives and here's Monsters on the Prowl, but they're in bits and pieces. And for that 4 years, from 1972 to 1976, they were really trying to reach out to a bigger audience, a more adult audience, and you could tell that everybody involved was trying to step their game up. The artists were trying, you know, they were taking more time on their pages. They were doing better work on this stuff. It wasn't like, well, it's got to be on crappy paper and Vince Coletta's probably going to ink it, so fuck this. It was a lot of, okay, Sonny Trinidad's going to be inking this. Pablo Marcos is going to be inking this. The people in the Philippines are going to be inking this. People who bring their own work to the fore. You had writers like Don McGregor and Doug Mensch and Tony Isabella and Steve Gerber who looked at this as, we don't have to adhere to the Marvel formula. We could step out of it and do more mature, more adult stories. Not meaning, now we get boobies, but more, we could deal with something other than bad guy A versus superhero B. Fight. They could do more with that. And it was just kind of this weird little golden era of Marvel that, because it wasn't part of the regular line, just kind of got shunted off to the side. And because it only lasted 4 years, it's mostly forgotten. But boy, reading that Marvel Horror Lives Again, that stuff was just so goddamn good. Another omnibus that showed up in my box today was Infinity Gauntlet. I did not pick it up the first time that it was printed because it was really expensive and I didn't have a job that paid me very much money. Now, it's still very expensive, but I have a job that paid me more money. Boy, this art looks so much better than when it was printed on that flexographic press back in the 90s. Well, late 80s, early 90s. And because it wasn't something where Marvel marketing jumped in and forced everything, you could really tell that Jim Starlin had said, I've got a story I want to do. It's going to be big, and it builds off of what I did back in the 70s. You had Ron Lim showed up at Marvel and was knocking it out of the park. You had George Perez on it. And then the tie-ins were people who really actually kind of cared about being part of it, rather than, all right, it's tie-in, everybody jump in the pool. Roy Thomas just dove in and had so much fun with it on his Doctor Strange. Boy, this stuff is good. This stuff is just so good. And then the last thing
How good is it?
It's a buy. And the last thing I am going to be geeking on, Joe, do you go to the Humble Bundle website?
The what?
Humble Bundle. HumbleBundle.com.
Which
Humble
you can
Bundle.
find in Google search too.
Yep. If you go to the Humble Bundle website, They usually, they've got a subscription service. They sell games at a discounted price, but they have bundles, and that's how they started. And what the bundles are a pay what you want, and if you pay over a certain threshold, you get more. Mostly it's video games and computer stuff, but they have started adding more and more comics. And one of the things that they added most recently is from AWA. No, not the American Wrestling Association. No, it's artists, writers, and artisans. The people who, it's that new, Bill Gemmis company. But you can pick up everything they've printed so far. The J. Michael Straczynski book, The Resistance. The Red Border book, Year Zero. Archangel. Let's see, what is it? Hotel, Hotell, like hell. Archangel. The entire run of those first series for $15 digitally. A while back, they had a 2000 AD bundle, which had a shit ton of Judge Dredd, Stromium Dog, everything Alan Moore had done, etc., etc. And it also ran anywhere between, I think it was $15 to $20. Image has stuff every so often. Smaller press publishers, boom, Dynamite. Yeah, I picked up a Dynamite bundle about a year ago that had a bunch of stuff digitally. And you decide what charity it goes to. When I picked up the AWA bundle, I chose the Hero Initiative, which is going to be one of our charities that we highlight. And you choose how much you want to go to the charity, how much you want to go to the creators, and how much you want to go to the website. But it's pay what you want. And you get, the more you pay, the more you get, of course. It's a wonderful way to pick up a bunch of digital comics and support a charity. I probably am going to be buying more and more from them as they work with more and more comic publishers. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for almost 2 hours.
And this isn't even a preview show.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Cory, I'm so happy. I feel like dancing. Hit my music.